Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Shanita. I'm with Restoring Lives. I'm jumping on today to talk to you guys about mentors, volunteers. We're even going to talk about interns, therapists. We're just going to talk from the perspective of the leadership that touches the lives of the youth that we work with, and talk about a subject that we don't want to be uncomfortable. We want this subject to be more empowering. But we're going to talk today about cultural competency versus anti-racism. And so one of the things that all of us have in our profession, especially if you are in a corporate professional position, if you're in a position as a therapist, intern, and hopefully in your mentorship programs, as well as some of the other programs as healthcare workers, you are talking about being culturally sensitive and having culturally competencies. And usually when you talk about those subjects, it is around you just being aware about other cultures, being aware about the things they do in those cultures, aware about the things that they do from a perspective of an orientation, religion, those kind of things. So that you don't necessarily make the consumer that you're working with uncomfortable, and that you are more aware when they have a conversation. But today we're going to watch a video from a therapist that I kind of been watching and following, and really have a conversation about moving away from being culturally competent to be more aware of where maybe our biases are, and some of the things that we do that are just not acceptable to, as I call them, Black, Indigenous people of color, and being more aware. These are conversations that I am extending a olive branch out to any person and to any organization who would like to come have this conversation with me. Whether you agree or disagree, please come have the conversation about it. And also to be more aware. One of the things that happened for us in 2020, along with the pandemic, is I think we became more aware about some of the systematic issues that are in our organizations, in our corporations, in our way of life. And to be able just to have, like I say, a empowering conversation, not necessarily a conversation of fault and guilt, but open-minded conversation. And so being that we service people of color, Black people, Indigenous people, we want to be more aware and are becoming more conscientious about what the people we serve need, what they have endured, where they need our assistance in. And so it starts with us as a leader. So I am wanting to share this video. I think it's a great video for us to watch and have a conversation. And so once again, as I said, let's look at this more from the perspective of us having a open mind to the conversation. Let's see, I have several things up, so let me kind of see. Moving for cultural competency to anti-racism.
So it's important to know that white therapists can be anti-racist therapists. And what I mean by that, as opposed to just cultural competence, right? Cultural competence is often about have you learned some information about different communities? Do you have some sense of your own identity? but to have an anti-racist stance is more active. It is more intentional, and some directories or mental health networks have started educating communities of color to tell them that it's a small percentage of psychologists and mental health professionals that are ethnic minority. And so as they're looking for therapists, and even you can have an ethnic minority therapist who does not have that consciousness around being actively anti-racist. So what these networks are recommending to people when they call to look for a therapist is to ask them, what are your thoughts about the impact of racism on mental health? What are your thoughts about the impact of white supremacy on mental health? As a taste test, like a measure of, and if the answer is, well, I believe people are people, well, then there you have your answer, that this is not someone who is going to be able to acknowledge and engage with you, because they're not even willing to acknowledge that it exists and that it has an impact, right? And so it's important to be able to communicate awareness and compassion that these events are happening, that oppression is a reality now, right? So the historical piece is helpful to know. And it is very, very important to be able to not go into victim blaming. So when we go into trying to defend and explain people who have said or done harmful things, then it lets the client know this is someone who is not really safe for me. They're not really for me. And what it requires from us, when I say from us, I mean, whenever you're a part of the majority group, is to release my defensiveness, because our usual tendency is to connect with the person we see as a reflection of ourselves, right? Because if the mom did something bad, then maybe that means I do something bad, so that I need to make it okay, right? And so, the example that comes to me from my own experience is around working with clients with disabilities as an able-bodied person. And I was teaching multicultural psychology, and I had a guest presenter who uses a wheelchair, and she was talking about coming across the campus, this place where I used to teach, and the invisibility of systematically everyone refusing to look at her, right? That no one as she came across the campus, no one would look at her. So in my able-bodiedness, what my defensive instinct, which I didn't speak on, but what came to my mind was, like, I know what that is because I have done it, in terms of trying not to stare, looking away, right? Without ever taking into consideration, what would it feel like if everyone does that? If everyone is averting their gaze, right? And again, that difference between intention and impact. Even if you did not intend to be rude or mean, that it is an erasure, right? And so to be able to sit with that. And that's what I would say for white clinicians when ethnic minority client is describing an experience. Your instinct may be to try to figure out how they could be interpreting it incorrectly, right? Because we want to believe that things are fair and right, and maybe I would do that, or maybe my cousin would do that, and we're not bad people. But instead, to really sit with, what is it this person is saying, and what we cannot fully imagine, but what might it be like to have that experience, and then to respond with that support. And I want to say, actually, that can be very therapeutic and healing in a way that hits on another level than them hearing it from me, right? And what I mean by that is, when I've had rape survivors who were raped by a man, had a male therapist tell them how wrong that was of what happened to them, it registers in another way, because this person, in some ways, they identify with that group, right? And so instead of feeling powerless, like, oh, I won't be able to help my ethnic minority clients, instead, with humility, because people have talked about now, not just cultural competence, but cultural humility, which is, I don't know everything, and a continuous learning and an openness and a recognition. So with humility and compassion, that this could really be a therapeutic moment. It could really be healing.
Wow. I thought that was a great video, and I think that she did a great job in sharing in some areas that we can look at. Even saying that this is just not necessarily for non-Hispanic white clinicians and others, but even people of color, that we need to look at some of the things we do. I like how she said, that we could be diverting our gaze, diverting away, looking away, not necessarily being there, and as we say in the therapy world, um, reserving space, taking space for somebody's situation, for what they have going on, and being able to, from an empathetic perspective, no, I don't necessarily know what you're talking about, but to be able to listen to what they're saying, and to just do some sense of validating, and not some sense of accepting as we're blaming you, accepting it as it is being malicious, that you're mean, any of those things. So I just shared that today from the perspective of us as leaders, therapists, interns, mentors, volunteers, those that work with children. And this really, from our perspective, we work for children. Let's start looking at not just being culturally competent, sensitive, even culturally humble, as she shared, but really breaking down to be anti-racist, and trying to get a better understanding of where they're coming from, even as she said, providing the apology that may be necessarily needed for what somebody has experienced, or for what somebody, may be going through. Um, Open to have a conversation, open to come together, open to answer any questions. One of the things that is a value for us here at Restoring Lives is standing on equity and standing on fairness. And so, and then to be able to communicate about our emotions, our feelings. And I'm okay with having the tough questions and conversations. I'm okay with that. And I think that this is the year for that. This is the time for us, if we haven't been doing it, that we need to do it. So if you joined us today, we greatly do appreciate you joining us live as we talked about this subject that can be uncomfortable at times, but a needed conversation. If you're joining us in the replay, thank you. Thank you for continuing to follow us and support us. We'll drop down in the comment the actual name of how you can connect to us for our email, and of course our telephone numbers. We'll also jump down our social media so you can follow us. For those of you guys that watch live on Instagram, we'll put the YouTube link in so you can go watch the video, because you only had the opportunity to listen. Thank you guys for just giving me the opportunity to share, opportunity for us to learn, as well as myself, and for us to be better as we go help other people. You guys have a great afternoon. Continue to enjoy your lunch. If you're here in Ardmore, it was a little sunnier, but it looks like it's kind of got a little cloudy. So don't blow away, because we have a lot of wind today. Y'all have a great afternoon. See you later. Bye.